Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at how a pretty cool English language learning resource is put together.
Okay.
We've got all these materials and they basically lay out like a structured path to learning the basics of English. It's all broken down into these really well-planned lessons. And our goal today is to sort of dissect the whole thing and see how it's designed to help someone get those fundamental English skills.
I think that's a fantastic goal, because what really struck me looking at this resource is just how methodical it is. You know, it's not just throwing a bunch of phrases at you. It's like a system that's built to give you a real solid foundation in the language.
Right.
And I think what's really clever is how it focuses on these everyday situations.
Right.
You know, it starts with simple greetings, but it goes all the way to navigating travel or even like basic work conversations.
Absolutely.
It's very practical.
I mean, for someone just starting out, the range of real-world situations they cover is amazing. It seems laser-focused on giving you the tools to actually communicate.
Exactly.
Out in the real world. And it's less about like the abstract granting rules and more about getting comfortable with simple language in like contexts you'll actually encounter.
And I think that's where the learning methods it emphasizes really come in. You know, things like repetition, using real-life examples.
Yeah.
These are fundamental to making it accessible for a beginner.
For sure. So basically our mission today is to get under the hood of this whole thing, understand not just what it covers, but how it's structured.
Yeah.
To make the learning process as effective as possible.
Right.
So let's start by looking at the typical format of each lesson.
Okay.
What can you tell us about that?
What's really fascinating is that each lesson follows a consistent structure.
Okay.
Which I think can be really helpful for someone who's new to learning a language.
Yeah.
It seems like each lesson kind of follows this pattern. You start with an intro, then you move into the main content, then there's a practice section, and it wraps up with a conclusion.
I see. Why do you think that kind of consistency is so important?
Well, it strikes me that this predictable format probably helps to reduce cognitive load for the learner.
Okay.
Because you know what to expect.
Right.
So you can focus your energy on actually learning the new language instead of trying to figure out the learning process itself.
Yeah, it's like having a familiar roadmap for each session.
Exactly.
And you mentioned an introduction in each lesson. What does that typically involve?
So the intro really sets the scene for the lesson.
Okay.
It usually starts with a friendly greeting, which is always nice.
Yeah.
And then it introduces the topic for that lesson and highlights some of the key vocab you'll be learning.
Right.
It's like giving you a sneak peek of what's ahead.
Makes total sense. Knowing the destination before you start the journey.
Exactly.
And then we get to the main content. What's the approach there?
So the main content is really where the core learning happens.
Okay.
They really emphasize clear and deliberate speaking.
Yeah.
Using simple everyday words.
Yeah.
And that slow pace and straightforward vocabulary is crucial for comprehension. It gives learners the chance to grasp the pronunciation and meaning without feeling overwhelmed. What really stood out to you about how they deliver that main content?
What I notice is that it's not just isolated words. They incorporate real-life examples and dialogue, so it's not just apple. It's I would like an apple.
Exactly.
Seeing the language used in contexts like that seems so much more effective for understanding how it functions, in real communication.
Absolutely.
Plus, they highlight repeating key words and phrases, which reinforces that initial exposure.
Repetition is so powerful. It's not just about rote memorization. Memory research suggests that repeated exposure, especially when it's combined with context, really strengthens the neural pathways associated with that new information.
Wow.
So recall becomes much more efficient over time.
That's fascinating. And then following the main content, we have the practice section, which seems super crucial for active learning.
It is.
What does that entail?
So the practice section is where you get to actively engage with what you've just learned. So it encourages you to repeat phrases, which is great for pronunciation.
Yeah.
And building muscle memory for speaking. There are comprehension questions to check your understanding. And then there's usually like a short quiz or exercise to help solidify what you've learned.
So it's moving from passive listening to active doing.
Exactly.
How does that active engagement contribute to the learning process?
Well, that active engagement is key because it moves learning from just receiving information to actually processing and applying it, which not only reinforces understanding, but it also helps you identify areas where you might need more practice.
I see.
And the immediate feedback you get from those comprehension questions and those quizzes, that's really valuable for tracking your progress.
And finally, each lesson concludes. So what are the typical elements of a conclusion?
So the conclusion kind of brings everything together.
Okay.
It usually includes a summary of the main points, which is great for reinforcement.
Yeah.
It often offers suggestions for additional practice, which caters to different learning styles and paces.
Right.
And importantly, it provides motivation to keep going.
Oh, that's so important.
Which can be crucial in language learning where progress can sometimes
absolutely
feel slow.
So if we connect this consistent structure across all these lessons, it seems like this resource is intentionally creating a very predictable and supportive learning environment. Learners know what to expect each time, which I think can really reduce anxiety.
Absolutely.
And make the whole process less daunting.
It's about building confidence through familiarity.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp on the structure of each lesson. Now let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
The specific topics they cover across these multiple lessons. And it seems to follow a really logical flow, starting with the absolute essentials.
Indeed.
So what are we talking about here?
So the resource kicks off with basic greetings and self-introductions.
Okay.
The real cornerstones of communication.
The building blocks.
Exactly. So things like, hello, good morning, how are you? Being able to say, my name is, I am from.
Yeah.
These are the phrases that allow you to initiate contact and start building connections right away.
Why do you think starting with those fundamentals is so effective?
Well, even knowing just those few phrases allows you to participate in basic human interactions.
Yeah.
It's empowering from the very start.
Right.
And it gives you that sense of progress very quickly.
Okay, so from there, it seems to progress to talking about daily routines.
Yes.
And time expressions.
Exactly.
So we see examples like, I wake up at 7 a.m., common time markers like in the morning, at night. How does this build upon those initial greetings and introductions?
Well, once you can greet someone and introduce yourself, being able to talk about your daily life is that next logical step in sharing information. And these are the kinds of conversations you're likely to have early on. When interacting with English speakers, discussing schedules, habits, the flow of your day, it provides that deeper level of connection.
And it doesn't stop there. They move into super practical scenarios like shopping and ordering food.
Yes, very important.
Things like, how much is this? I would like a sandwich. These are phrases you would need almost immediately in an English-speaking environment. Even something as basic as, can I have the menu, please?
Yeah.
Is essential for navigating a restaurant. What's the value of prioritizing those like transactional phrases?
Well, these are often called survival phrases.
Okay.
And they're crucial for feeling confident and independent in a new linguistic environment.
Makes sense.
Being able to handle those basic transactions reduces stress and allows you to meet those immediate needs.
Okay, then we move on to vocabulary for family and friends.
Yep.
And learning how to describe relationships. Examples like mother, brother, cousin. Sentences like, she is my sister, my best friend is.
Right.
This lets learners start talking about the people who are important to them. How does that contribute to their overall learning?
Well, this adds a really important emotional and personal dimension to language learning.
Okay.
Being able to talk about loved ones allows learners to share their world with others and build those deeper connections.
Yeah.
It moves beyond just functional language to something more personal.
For sure.
And that can be a huge motivator.
Following that, the resource tackles something that can be tricky for newcomers, asking for and giving directions.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
Phrases like, where's the bank? Instructions like go straight, then turn left.
Right.
Using location markers like next to the supermarket. These are so useful for getting around.
They are.
Why is this such an important area to cover?
Well, navigating physical space is a fundamental human need. And being able to ask for and understand directions really fosters independence and confidence,
Okay.
especially when you're in a new place and you don't know your way around.
And then it continues with describing places and weather using simple adjectives like beautiful, crowded.
Right.
Weather expressions, it's sunny, it's raining. This adds more descriptive power to their basic vocabulary,
It does.
allowing for richer communication. What's the significance of being able to describe things in this way?
Well, being able to describe your surroundings and the weather allows you to engage in more nuanced conversation
Okay.
and understand the context around you. It's not just about stating facts. It's about adding detail and expressing your perceptions.
Right.
This also opens the door to more social interactions
Okay.
and small talk.
Then we get into talking about hobbies and interests.
Yes.
And expressing likes and dislikes. So we have examples like, I like reading the question, what do you like to do?
Right.
This opens up opportunities for more personal and engaging conversations and helps build that common ground with others. How does this shift the focus of the learning?
Well, this is where language learning starts to move beyond just necessity. It becomes more about connection and enjoyment.
Okay.
Sharing your interests, discovering shared passions with others, that can be a really powerful motivator.
Yeah.
And it makes the language learning process much more rewarding.
And of course, essential English for travel situations is covered.
Of course.
Airport phrases like, where is the check-in counter? Hotel phrases like, I have a reservation.
Right.
These are super practical for anyone planning to visit an English-speaking country. What makes this kind of targeted vocabulary so valuable?
This kind of targeted vocabulary acts like a mini survival kit
Oh, okay.
for specific situations. Knowing these key phrases can really reduce stress and anxiety
Yeah.
associated with travel.
That foreign country.
It allows you to navigate those essential travel processes with more ease and confidence.
Absolutely.
The resource also touches on basic work and business English vocab.
Including words like meeting deadline, phrases like, can you help me with this task?
Right.
It indicates an awareness that some learners might be using English in a professional context.
For sure.
Even a basic understanding there can be so beneficial.
Absolutely. Even a foundational understanding
Yeah.
of work-related vocabulary can open up opportunities
Yeah.
and improve communication. In those professional settings,
Right.
it provides a stepping stone for further development
Okay.
in business English if needed.
Finally, it explores conversational English in a cafe or restaurant setting.
Yes.
Phrases like, can I have a coffee? Can I get the check, please? Even simple social phrases like, this cafe is nice.
Right.
These everyday interactions are so important for feeling comfortable and integrated.
They are.
What's the impact of being able to participate in these, seemingly small interactions?
Well, these everyday interactions, while they might seem small,
Yeah.
they're crucial for building confidence and a sense of belonging. They give you opportunities to practice your English in a relaxed social environment,
Right.
and they help you feel more connected to the community around you.
Yeah, it's about more than just getting your needs met. It's about actually participating
Exactly.
in daily life. So throughout all of this resource emphasizes certain pedagogical approaches that are really key for effective learning.
Yeah.
We're talking about repetition, which we discussed aids memory. Active listening is encouraged, which trains your ear to recognize sounds and intonation.
Right.
The use of real-life examples, which provides that context. And speaking at a natural but slightly slower pace, which aids comprehension without sounding artificial.
Yes.
Why are those specific methods so effective for language acquisition?
Well, these methods align with really well-established principles of language acquisition.
Okay.
Repetition reinforces memory through spaced retrieval. Active listening improves auditory discrimination and comprehension, which are fundamental to understanding spoken English. Real-life examples make the language relevant and show how it's actually used.
Right. And that slightly slower pace gives learners more processing time. Without sounding unnatural,
Okay.
it kind of bridges the gap between native speaker speed and beginner comprehension.
So when we put it all together,
Yeah.
what's the overall picture we get?
Well, it seems like this structured approach, moving methodically from those simple greetings to more complex, but practical scenarios, is really designed to build both confidence and practical communication skills in a step-by-step way.
It's not about overwhelming the learner.
Exactly. It's about building a solid foundation progressively, introducing new concepts and vocabulary in a logical order, and providing those ample opportunities for practice and reinforcement. And this gradual approach helps to avoid feeling overwhelmed and allows learners to build confidence as they move through the material.
To summarize, this English language learning resource offers a really well-defined and progressive path.
It does. For beginners, it prioritizes practical topics, follows a consistent lesson structure, reinforces learning through repetition and real-life examples. It seems like a very accessible and effective way to gain those foundational English skills without feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
The careful sequencing of topics, moving from those initial greetings to more involved social interactions, combined with those clear pedagogical methods, really suggests a thoughtful and effective design for language learning. So for our final thought today, you might consider this.
Okay.
We've seen how breaking down a complex skill, like learning a new language, into manageable thematic lessons, each with built-in practice, can be a really effective strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe take a moment to reflect on areas in your own life, perhaps learning a new hobby, tackling a big project, or even improving a skill you already have, where adopting such a structured and progressive approach could lead to some surprising results.
That's a great thought.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.